Hey, it's been a really long time since I made one of these. So much has happened in between now and when I last made an episode, so let's just dive in. So, welcome back to yet another episode of the Holland Impact. So much has happened since we last chatted together. I failed my first class, so that's it's been fun. But no worries. I am prepping to retake it during the fall semester of this year. I walked away from my job that I've had for the last 2 years, and I put on a lot of weight. So that's just that's the cherry on top of that turd sundae. The only thing that's been holding me together during these last few months is my wonderful wife. She's really good at keeping me tethered to reality and this beautiful blue earth. And I just wanted to give her a shout out, my sweet Kaylin. I love you to the moon and back, and then some. Today, I didn't really have a prompt to go off of. I just wanted to record something and get it out ASAP yams. So I thought I would talk about this blog I wrote during my very first semester at BYU, Idaho. So let me just get that pulled up real quick. Okay, so my very first semester at BYU, Idaho, I took a class called Family Relations. And just for your information, at that time, I was a marriage and family studies major. So we had to, for our weekly assignments, we had to write a blog post about something that we learned in class that week that we thought was interesting. So my third blog post was what I called communication theory, because we were learning about like family systems, theories, and dynamics, like the culture of families. So I thought I would just read this for you guys, and then we'll go from there. It's going to be so awkward because I have improved my writing. My writing now is light years better than it was as a freshman, and I'm a senior now, so this is a blast from the past. Okay, so here we go. What is a theory? For the layman like myself, I have to dumb things down in order to understand them better. In its simplest definition, a theory is an explanation as to why something is the way it is. Scientists will use these theories to guide their research in whatever field of science they may be practicing. This week in class, we learned about different theories having to do with behavior, both within the family and outside the family. Systems theory maintains that any intimate group must be observed as a whole. It analyzes how each member of the family influences one another. As a system, each individual family member has roles and rules that apply to them, which directly affects the whole unit. Though members of the family may be individual in their specific role that they fill, they have an impact on the rest of the group so as to support and maintain the family system. For example, this theory can be illustrated by the father figure, who financially supports the family, the mother who nurtures their children, the son or daughter who maybe babysits while the mother and father are out on a date, and strengthening their marriage. Social exchange theory deals with the idea that all of us do our best to keep our costs lower than the reward in any interaction. The quote-unquote costs can be referred to as such diverse elements as time, money, emotional or intellectual energy, and anything else that a person describes as their contribution to a relationship. On the other hand, the rewards for these cost and reward situations, the rewards in relationships could be money, emotional or intellectual gratification, a sense of security, anything else that a person describes as a satisfying outcome of a relationship. The size of the cost and the size of the reward in relationships can depend on how invested a person is in their relationship. If the relationship is consistently charging us more than what we actually receive from the reward, the relationship is more than likely to fall apart. In relationships, we tend to weigh out the pros and the cons. We ask ourselves, what will be the costs and rewards in a situation such as this? We attempt to determine for ourselves if certain relationships will be fair for both partners when it comes to cost and reward. This process occurs when selecting a partner or even a spouse. It happens in the discussion of responsibilities in relationships, where the husband and wife both have careers to fulfill. It happens in decision making, the raising of children, and other circumstances having to do with life in a family. Symbolic interaction theory is the view that we are molded and influenced by our day-to-day interactions with those around us. We can take this to mean that not only does the tone of an interaction have an effect on us, but also the fact that we had an interaction to begin with has an effect on us. Now, if you retain anything from what I share about symbolic interaction theory, an extremely important factor of this theory is something called the definition of the situation. This means that when someone does to one person, it means something totally different to another person involved. For example, just to illustrate this for you, to a guy, if you're at a party, it appears his girlfriend might be flirting with other men. But in reality, she's just being nice, and the boyfriend is overthinking. It is only when couples fail to address apparent definitions and situations and communicate, this is where relationships collapse. The following story is true, but names have been changed because of privacy reasons. This is a story that my professor shared in class, which is a true story. He was involved, but I changed names of everyone. So, Craig and Shania have been married for 5 years. What drew Craig to his wonderful wife was her ability to inspire those around her. She's a very successful public speaker who would be hired from companies all across the country to speak publicly. Craig loves that Shania... I misread that. Craig loves Shania with a love like no other, even despite some health issues that she might have. There's only one problem in the relationship. Around their 4-year anniversary, their communication seemed to take a dive. Surely they would talk to one another, but their ability to discuss internal emotions and troubles waned. Shania became increasingly agitated with her husband because he would do things for her that she claims she can do on her own, like carrying her own stuff. One incident included her picking an easily affordable hotel in New York City that was 30 minutes away from a theater where she would be leading seminars. Even though she had paid for the hotel, She learned later on that her husband had gone ahead and paid for a more expensive hotel room that was right across the street from the seminar. She was livid. She thought, I can take care of myself, darn it. He only cares about how he looks to those around him. This is the last straw. Within the next few days, Shania was speaking to a lawyer instead of her husband, getting papers together for the purposes of divorce. Craig and Shania went to a marriage and family therapist and discussed their issues one-on-one with the counselor. The counselor learned just what I had described from Shania and more. Shania was tired of being babied by her husband, and she told the therapist that she had already made her decision. She had every intention of divorcing Craig. On the other hand, the therapist gained a new perspective when listening to Craig's side of the story. Craig described his love for his wife and his willingness to spend a little extra so that she can be comfortable. He said he bought a hotel room across the street from the theater because he was trying to keep Shania's health in mind. He thought the trip from the hotel 30 minutes from the theater would be rough on her health. So everything Craig had ever done for Shania was out of love, not vanity. The therapist brought them together and said, well, Craig, it sounds like Shania has made her decision. It really seems like divorce is inevitable. So when do you want this to be finalized? And the 5-year-old couple told their therapist that they weren't sure because they had flight plans for Hawaii in a week that were non-refundable, and also they didn't know if they should give them away to anyone. The therapist chimed in and said, well, what if you two went on a reverse honeymoon? I would hate for you both to end your 5 years together on this kind of note. So why not go on one last trip together and try to end it on a good note? Craig and Shania looked at each other for a moment and said they would. Now fast forward 2 weeks later, Craig and Shania had returned from their trip. The therapist received a visit from them and was shocked to see this revitalized couple walk into their office, hand in hand. What happened? He said. Just a few weeks ago, Shania was dead set on divorce, but now you two look inseparable. And Shania spoke up and said they came to the conclusion that their communication needed to change. They recapitulated to one another all that they had vented to their therapist and made the resolve to better communicate. When they got up to leave the office, Craig instinctively reached for his wife's handbag to carry it for her, and he stopped just before he grabbed it and looked at his wife and said, "Honey, may I carry your bag for you?" She smiled and said yes. Having heard this story in class, the last theory I want to talk about is communication theory. Communication is what makes or breaks a relationship. I know this from personal experience because I was never the best at communicating. But through my experience, I know that communication helps strengthen your respect for others as well as others' respect that they have for you. It helps avoid misunderstandings. It builds trust in a relationship. It takes the guessing out of what's wrong. And it isn't as emotionally damaging as holding everything inside. Communicate like your relationships depend upon it. There's one more story I want to tell you before I end this episode. Two people are involved in this story. Their names are Brandon and their names are Lucille. Obviously, their names have been changed to protect the innocent. They were together for 2 years. They were obviously in love and committed to each other. But the only problem in their relationship was that she never talked to him about the things that he did that bothered her. And even when he would ask if what he was doing, like, would she rather have him not do this or would she rather have him do something else, she just wouldn't say anything. She would just smile and nod and say, "Oh, it's okay." He never opened the car door for her and she wanted him to, but he didn't know that. He had a bit of a sailor's mouth and she didn't like that. But she didn't say anything, so he didn't know anything about it. He always took the middle piece of the Stouffer's lasagna dish, even when she likes that part of the lasagna. But he didn't know that. He always had control of the music in the car, playing John Mayer when she wanted to listen to some Taylor Swift. But he didn't know that. But despite her mounting frustrations, Lucille kept everything inside, hidden behind a smile and a reassuring word. After 2 years of dating, Brandon gets down on one knee and asks if she would marry him. What do you think he said? No. Right? No. But he asked why, and she said, well, because of all these things you do, and they bother me, and I don't like that. And what did he say? He said, well, why didn't you say anything before? I've brought this up a number of times, but you didn't say anything was bothering you. And she said, because, well, I didn't feel it was the right time to tell you. He said, you had 2 years to tell me what was wrong. So how do you expect me to trust you now to tell me if there's anything wrong in our relationship going forward? And she said, well, maybe this relationship isn't working out. I'm sorry if you feel blindsided. And he said, I don't feel blindsided. I feel lied to. And he walked away. So she may have broken up with him, but in his heart, he had already resigned himself from their hollow relationship. Now, along with communication theory, which was what I was talking about beforehand, this is also tied into something I learned in my industrial organizational psychology class. The topic which was discussed was about handling counterproductive work behaviors. But the same principle applies in this short story that I've just shared. The principle is, the worst thing a manager can do when handling counterproductive work behaviors is they wait. I'll say that again. The worst thing a manager can do when it comes to handling counterproductive work behaviors is they wait. Want to know why that's the worst thing a manager can do? Want to know why that's the worst thing anybody can do? Is because a Hallmark 2009 study on habit creation found that habits are developed anywhere within a range of 18 to 254 days. Habit development can happen anywhere in between that time. The idea that it takes 21 days to form a habit, that's a myth. If nobody's willing to correct you during that time, even after you're like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Or what can I do better? That person isn't worth your time, because they aren't trustworthy enough to help you achieve the growth you're capable of achieving. They aren't willing to point out your blind spots to you and help you out. when it really matters. And here's the kicker. Are you ready? Brandon and Lucille don't even exist. It's just a metaphor for why I left my previous job. Now you know.